The Hazardous Materials Regulations, or HMR, requires Hazmat employees like you to be trained and tested within 90 days before performing any task subject to the regulations. This video teaches you about HMRs, helps you work safely around Hazmat, and will help you meet the general awareness training requirements. You'll soon be able to describe the information on the Hazmat table that will help you determine if a material is hazardous, as well as recognize the hazard classes and divisions using the Hazmat table. You'll recognize materials that are considered hazardous substances, hazardous waste, marine pollutants, elevated temperature materials, and limited quantity materials. And finally, you'll be able to identify the purpose of shipping papers, markings, labels, and placards. The first step in shipping a material is determining what it is and if it is subject to the HMR. In other words, is it a hazardous material? For you to determine whether a material is hazardous, you must know the hazards of the material as well as the different hazard classifications and divisions in the HMRs. You must know the standards for hazardous substances, hazardous wastes, marine pollutants, elevated temperature materials, and limited quantity materials. I know that's a lot to remember, but no worries. We'll get through each of these steps in more detail right now. The Hazmat table is what you'll use to determine the hazards of the material, the hazard classification, and divisions. You'll need to know how to read the Hazmat table as part of your job. You'll start by determining if the material is explosive, flammable, combustible, poisonous, radioactive, or corrosive. For some materials, this is easy since the material and its hazards may be well known. For example, most people know gasoline is hazardous. For other materials, the hazard may not be known, or there may be some question as to what the hazard is. This is where the Hazmat table comes in. You'll need to be able to determine the hazard classification of each material you handle while at work. There are 9 total. They're used to assign a material to a hazard category. A material may meet the definition of more than one class, but it's assigned to only one. Some hazard classes are also divided further into divisions. In addition to the hazard classes and divisions, a material may also be regulated because it is a hazardous substance, hazardous waste, marine pollutant, elevated temperature material, or limited quantity material. Hazardous substances can be dangerous to public health or the environment and are listed in the Hazardous Materials Regulations. The list of hazardous substances includes materials like asbestos, PCBs, and lead. Hazardous substances that meet or exceed the quantity on the list are called a reportable quantity, or RQ. Common hazardous wastes you might run into include solvents and pesticides. They are subject to the hazardous waste manifest requirements of the Environmental Protection Agency. These rules are specified in 40 CFR 262. Aldrin, DDT, and turpentine are examples of marine pollutants. A full list is included in Appendix B to 49 CFR 172.101. They're packaged in a concentration which equals or exceeds 10% for marine pollutants and 1% for severe marine pollutants. The marine pollutant marking must always be displayed when the material is transported by vessel. An elevated temperature material is a material in a bulk package that is in a liquid phase at a temperature at or above 212 degrees Fahrenheit, in a liquid phase with a flash point at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit that is intentionally heated above its flash point, or in a solid phase at room temperature at or above 464 degrees Fahrenheit. Asphalt and molten sulfur are both examples of possible elevated temperature materials. Often thought of as a separate classification, limited quantity is a hazardous material in classes 2 to 9 that meet specific exception requirements in the regulations. These materials present a limited hazard during transport. This is usually due to their form, quantity, and packaging. Common examples include bleach, small arms ammunition, cosmetics, and drain cleaners. They're often excluded from most of the rules because of this limited hazard. The HMR requires each shipper to properly classify a material and to communicate the material's hazards. This can be done through the use of basic descriptions on shipping papers, markings and labels on packages, and placards and markings on transport vehicles. Shipping papers, which can be a shipping order, bill of lading, or a manifest, are important to the hazmat transportation process. If an accident or incident occurs, shipping papers provide emergency responders with much of the information they need to respond quickly and appropriately. Time is critical in an emergency. That's why it's so important the information entered on a shipping paper must be correct. Shipping papers are required for all hazmat shipments unless they meet certain exceptions listed in the HMRs. Markings provide valuable information about the hazardous material that is being shipped. They are used with labels and placards to help communicate information about the hazmat. Most labels are 4-inch by 4-inch diamonds attached to a shipping box or packaging. They communicate a warning of a material's hazards. The colors and symbols on labels show the hazard or division of the material inside a packaging. Placards look like labels but are much larger in size, 10 inches by 10 inches. Most bulk packagings, freight containers, unit load devices, transport vehicles, and rail cars containing hazmat must be placarded on each side and each end. If you will be working with shipping papers, markings, labels, or placards, there are other videos and trainings that will help you learn what you need to know about these function-specific requirements. This general awareness video was just the start of your hazmat training. Now that you are familiar with the HMR and are able to recognize and properly identify hazardous materials, it's time to determine where your training goes from here. I don't have to tell you, hazardous materials are dangerous. No matter what your job or function is in the transportation of hazmat, remember your training and perform your tasks right every time. The health and safety of others depends on it.